Hello everyone. You're all welcome to our October meetup. My name is Linda Ntifel, and I am the convener of Women in Research, Monitoring, Evaluation, and Learning. So we are an online community that aims to accelerate the careers of women in the research, monitoring, evaluation, and learning space. However, our monthly meetups are open to all who associate themselves with the RMEL space and would like to dive in a little bit more about whatever is going on in the space, and also just to connect and to share knowledge with each other. So it's great to have you all join us today. Thank you so much for your time. So we'll dive straight in. Okay, and I will share my screen. So just let me know if you can see my screen. Okay. All right, so our topic for today is developing excellent reports for donors. And we are pleased to have our speaker, Judy Tuwei, who I'll be introducing shortly. But before that, I'll just like to run through the agenda so we have an idea of what we are going to do today. So after the welcome and icebreaker time, I'll introduce the speaker, and then she will take over with her presentation, after which we'll have a Q&A session. We'll have some announcements, and then we'll end our session for today. So let's dive in straight to our icebreaker. So I would like all of you to kindly unscramble these words. They are terminologies that you should be familiar with if you've been working in the research, monitoring, evaluation, and learning space for some time now. I'm sure these are words that you should or are conversant with. So please do well to provide your answers in the chat window. Just decide to start from anywhere. You don't necessarily have to go chronologically. You can start from any number, anyone that you can easily unscramble. So please take your time and share your answers in the chat window, or if you'd like to also unmute and share, that would be great. Okay, so we have some answers trickling in. So I see Jovial said number 1 is baseline. Okay, Judy she's been able to provide 3 answers. So number 1, baseline. Yes, that's correct. 2, progress. 3, beneficiaries. That's right. James says analysis. Yeah, I believe that's for number 5. Emmanuel also says analysis for number 5. Great. Okay, so there's one left. There's one more that people would have to unscramble. So far, we've been able to get 4 of the words correctly. All right, so we have Jovial who said donors for number 4. That's correct. Yes, Emmanuel, that's right. Great. Thank you all so much for participating. Very good. Thank you all. So I'll stop screen sharing now. Okay, so next I will invite our speaker. But before she comes, I will just read her profile. So our speaker for today is an expert facilitator. She's a MEL consultant and a social justice and community action enthusiast. She's also the founder and executive director of Retizen. So, Judy, we are ready for you. Please take us through this topic, which I believe resonates with a lot of us here on developing excellent reports for donors. We are pleased to have you. And please, participants, do well to welcome our speaker. You can give her a virtual applause or show your reactions as well as we welcome her. So Judy, over to you, please.
Thank you so much, Linda, for the opportunity to present this topic here. And I want to thank the ladies and gentlemen who made some time to attend this session. Well, this session is nothing new. It's something we've been doing. So I'm not going to tell you anything new. We are going to remind ourselves of what it takes to write excellent donor reports. I'm going to share my screen. And as I do that, allow me to turn off my video so that I maintain a strong internet connection. I might not be able to see your comments, questions in the chat. Linda, please assist me with that, just in case anyone pops a question and I'm unable to see. All right. Let's begin. So the topic today is about developing excellent donor reports. Yeah. So we talk of excellent reports, excellent donor reports. What do you think constitutes an excellent donor report? Anyone, feel free to unmute. We are going to discuss. Does anyone want to give it a shot? According to you, what is an excellent report? What should be contained in an excellent donor report? Yeah.
Okay, so Judy, there's an answer.
Yeah.
So the person said the report which meets donor requirements.
Exactly. Thank you so much. It is the report, of course, that meets the donor report requirements. An excellent report is a report that is submitted on time, that is relevant, and that is complete, with no grammatical errors, and it's a pleasure to read. Yeah. So why is donor reporting or producing excellent donor reports important? It is important because, number one, it is a PR activity for your organization. It is not just a routine task. It is an opportunity for you to maintain and strengthen the relationships you have with the donor. Well, I read somewhere that it is easier to maintain the donors you're having than to gain another donor. And how do you maintain the donors you're having? It's through showing how their investment is creating impact. Yeah. So generally, a well-crafted report encourages the donor to continue supporting your initiatives. So the goal here is to do our work so that they continue funding us. And how we do that is by illustrating the importance and impact of their contributions to our work. Yeah. So what are the key considerations you must take note of when you're writing donor reports or before writing your donor reports? Number one, you must engage all relevant teams. You need to collaborate with the project teams, the finance communication teams for you to be able to generate excellent donor reports. And these teams will ensure that the report you're generating is in alignment with the objectives you had committed to the donor, and it complies with the grant compliance guidelines. Number two is allocate sufficient time. You don't want to be rushing against deadlines, because when you are rushing to produce reports, chances are you will have errors in your report. And what that means is, once you have omissions and errors in your report, it paints a picture of something prepared in a rush. You did not pay attention in what you're preparing, and it doesn't paint a very beautiful picture about your organization. Remember, we said this is a PR opportunity, and we want to paint our organization in the positive light in the eyes of our donor. Finally, you must present your work in the best light. You must emphasize your successes and be honest about your initiatives, right? Present data to show what you have achieved, the progress. Sorry, I stopped sharing. I'm trying to move something here. All right. Linda, can you still see my screen?
Yes, it's visible at my end.
All right. So you need to present your work in the best light. So now when you're creating your donor reports, there are 3 ingredients that must be present in your report for it to be considered an excellent donor report. Ingredient number 1 is content. We will look at that, followed by the writing style, and finally, grammar and syntax. Now, most important thing we must take note of is that these ingredients must all be present in your report for your report to be considered excellent. Imagine you have the most amazing content and your grammar is bad, or you have grammatical errors. That does not qualify as an excellent report. So all these ingredients have to be present for your report to be considered as an excellent donor report. So let us look at ingredient number 1, which is content. Normally, donors want specific information that highlights the project's progress, challenges, and overall impact. So with regards to content, number 1, you must ensure the content you're presenting is complete. Sorry. It must be complete and relevant, yeah? The donor needs to know everything about the project. Implementing various projects with different donors, you will want to present to a specific donor information about the projects they're funding. You must ensure clarity and focus. Number 2, you must utilize the donor's template. Most donors have provided guidelines and templates outlining the key questions they expect you to answer during reporting. You must ensure that you are adhering to the guidelines in these templates when developing your reports. So having gone through a couple of donor reports that have donors, such as number 1, I don't know. Number 1 is the general information about your project. Next is picking a reminder about the key objectives of your project, followed by the activities, a highlight of the activities, results, and achievements for this reporting period, followed by, I don't know, Linda, is it possible to remove me as a host? Because I don't know why it keeps shifting the slides. Yeah. So they want to know the plans and the forecast for the next period. Technical, do you have any technical assistance needs? They also want to know the challenges, constraints, and risks associated with you. Finally, that's actually in there, because you can prepare beforehand and ensure you have this content way before the report is due, so that you are not rushing against deadlines. But it is important to always adhere to the reporting guidelines and specific guidelines for different donors. So in as much as you
Now,
know
please,
this
you
is
have
one
stopped.
of...
You have stopped. We've stopped seeing your screen.
Okay, let me share again. Thank you, Al Hassan, for letting me know. I will share right now. Please confirm if the screen is back.
Yes, I'm all good now.
Yes, it's back.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. So in as much as we know, these are the typical things that donors normally are familiar with the specific reporting guidelines by that specific donor, and that you adhere to this. So we're going to look at the 7 key questions framework for donor reporting, and this is what will guide you when you are developing content for your reports. I call it the 5 W's and the 2 H's. It ensures your report remains relevant, complete, and effectively communicates the necessary information to the donors. So let us look at these 5 W's and 2 H's. Number 1 is who. In every content in your report, it must identify the project users, beneficiary groups, partners, and stakeholders. Why is this important? It is important because it establishes the content of your project and shows who's impacted or engaged. Yeah. Next is the what. Yeah. What is it that you did? You must provide a clear description of the activities you undertook. This allows the donor to understand what your project or your organization has engaged in and what has been accomplished. Of course, in relation to the objectives you had committed to. Next is the where. You must specify the locations of the project or the program and the activities. Tell us where the activities took place. It helps the reader visualize the project's reach and the significance it has had in those specific communities that you are impacting. Next is the why. What is the rationale behind the actions you did? Why did you take the actions? Explain the purpose and the objectives of your activities. If there are any deviations, for example, you had planned to do a certain activity and you are unable to do it, please ensure you explain why this is so. Address any deviations from the planned course of action. Why is this important? It is important because it clarifies the intent behind your initiatives and also allows the donor to understand why things did not go as planned. Yeah. Next is for the W's. Tell us when the activities occurred. Put a time frame. Tell us the dates. Yeah. We want to know when the activities occurred as well as when the future actions will happen. It gives the donor a perspective on the progress against the milestones that you were supposed to have hit. Then we look at how. Ensure you touch on the how. How did you implement your activities? How are you collecting data? How are you verifying your data? How are you analyzing your data? Yeah. This illustrates that your organization has a strategy in place for gathering data, for example, and has, for example, solid data gathering processes. Finally, you need to touch on how many. And this is where the M&E folks really gets excited about. Well, you had committed to some indicators and some targets. Tell us how much have you attained so far? For example, the number of users you've served so far. How many events have you held? How many locations have we reached? Yeah. Why this is important is because it provides measurable insights to the impact your project is having, and it allows the donor to kind of measure the effectiveness of your project. So we have looked at the 7 questions framework. How do you use this then? Number 1, for every item or content or excerpt of your report, ensure that you answer all the 7 questions, or at least consider all the 7 questions, because sometimes not all questions are applicable for a specific content, but at least consider it before proceeding. Don't skip any question. Yeah. Number 2, you must avoid repetition. The goal here is to make our reports short and sweet for the donor. We don't want to waste the donor's time, but we want them to enjoy reading our reports. So avoid repetition and avoid restating things unless it is absolutely necessary. If you had already mentioned something, don't keep on mentioning the same thing. Number 3 is that the 7 questions framework can be used for visuals too. In fact, I encourage you to use it for visuals too. Yeah. When you are developing visuals, photographs for your report, consider the 7 questions and apply them in the visuals and diagrams. How do you do this? For example, imagine you have a photo in your report. In the caption of that photo, please check, have I included who is in the photo? Have I addressed the who? Have I addressed the what? Yeah? Describe the action or the context in which that photo is in. Have I considered the where? Please ensure you state the locations in which the images were taken and when. Have I considered or have I included when the photo or the image was taken? So the 7 questions framework is also applicable in your visuals. Finally, you must check your data. So this applies to the how many questions. You remember we've talked of indicators and ensuring you have data to back up progress towards achieving your targets. So for this, you need to check your data. Check and verify that the figures you're presenting in your report, the percentages, the statistics are accurate and consistent with your databases. You want to avoid any inconsistencies because remember, we say that donor reporting is an opportunity to show your best, to put your best foot forward and show your work in a positive light. So you don't want to raise suspicions about what you are achieving as an organization. And that's why you don't want any data discrepancies. So before we move on, just to check whether we have understood the piece on 7 questions framework. Take a minute or two and look at the excerpt or the part of a report on your screen, considering the 7 questions framework. What do you think is missing? What is wrong with that content? Feel free to type. Linda, please read for me if anyone has.
Sure, I will.
Yeah. Has anyone noted anything wrong with this part of a report?
Yeah. The figure is 53 instead of 54. When you add 6 girls to 47 boys, you get a total of 53. But the caption outside is 54. So
Thank you very much. Awesome. So there is a discrepancy there. It says 54 instead of 53. Yeah, thank you so much, sir. There is something else. What is missing?
Yeah,
I want to start.
The stated figure, it says of the 59 participants. Okay. No. I'll stop there.
Okay. Thank you. I see Moses K has said the where, specific location. So we are missing the where. We don't know where the activity took place, right? Yeah. Gloria is saying rationale. Key objectives of this event is missing. Yeah. We are also missing the how. I don't know if anyone has noticed that. We are missing the how. We don't know how the selection process was carried out. Yeah. All right. So let us continue. So when you're thinking of the content of your donor report, it is always quality over quantity. Yeah. You want to ensure that you have good quality report rather than a report with a lot of content, some of which might not be necessary. So here are the tips for you to ensure quality over quantity. Number 1, use the 7 key questions. Number 2, always adhere to the donor guidelines. Number 3, review donor feedback. Yeah. If donors have given you feedback before, this feedback provide insightful insights into what they find useful. So when you're doing another report, focus on those areas that they were key on. Incorporate visuals. Finally, make every word count. Yeah. Be intentional with your language. So let us look at the second ingredient, which was grammar. Yeah. Grammar is important because, as I said earlier, imagine you have not the perfect report, because it won't be perfect if the grammar is not right. So imagine you have a report that uses the right tone, the right style. It has the correct content, but the grammar is off. That does not qualify as an excellent donor report. And the problem with having grammar errors is, number 1, it undermines your organization's credibility. When donors read reports with spelling mistakes, grammatical errors, it jeopardizes the reputation of your organization. It looks like the report was developed in a rush. Yeah. Number 2 is a report with good grammar enhances understanding. When you have grammatical errors, it confuses the reader and it distracts the reader. Next is the impression, and I think I've touched on this. Bad grammar or grammar errors reflects bad on your organization, yeah? But when you have a polished report, it gives a positive impression of your organization. So grammar is key. And some of the common grammar errors are, number 1, punctuation. This is one of the common errors in donor reports, punctuations. And when you don't punctuate right, you might communicate something that you did not intend to communicate. You see the sentence down there. I hope you can see it. let's eat children. Yeah? What is wrong with that sentence? Anyone? Is there anything wrong with that sentence to begin with? And if so, what is wrong? Feel free to unmute. What is wrong with that sentence? Do you think they really meant, let's eat children?
Yeah, it could be you are directing people around you, so
Yeah.
you may consume children. Literally.
Yeah. That's what it's saying,
Literally.
yeah? Literally,
Yeah.
let us consume children, yeah?
Yeah.
How about,
It
hold on, don't mute. How about, is there anything we can do to that sentence to have it portray another meaning?
You could say
there should be a comma after it.
Thank you. There should be a comma after it. So you see, such punctuation errors might cause you to communicate something that you did not intend to communicate. So we need to pay attention to that. Next is the sentence structure. You must say it forward and clear. Avoid using complex structures that may confuse your readers. Spelling goes hand in hand with grammar and the errors of grammar. Always double check your spellings. In this age and era, we have so many tools that can help you do this. We will look at them later. Yeah, because as we said, like errors in grammar, spelling errors also reflect badly on your organization. Make good choose your words carefully, yeah, to intend the meaning you want to convey accurately. Avoid using jargons, guys. In development sector, people are used to jargons that sometimes we don't even realize we are overdoing it. So avoid using jargons because the goal here is to ensure the person reading your report understands it without too much effort. Finally, is capitalization. This is a culprit in many donor reports. People are using capitalized words in excess. Avoid overusing capitalized words. Don't use it where it's not necessary because when you do this, the report now becomes a bit distracting. Yeah. So here are the proofreading tips that you can take into consideration. Number one, take your time. You remember the 7 areas that most donors normally expect their donor reports to have. Start compiling data along those areas way before the deadline of the report so that you give yourself adequate time to review your writing and to check for any errors before you submit. When you wait for the last minute, chances are you will submit a report with errors and that won't look good on you. Next is read aloud. Once you've written a report, try reading it aloud to yourself. When you start hearing what you're reading, you might catch some mistakes that maybe you didn't see. Next is peer review. Make use of your colleagues. Ensure you have 2 or 3 colleagues go through the report and give you feedback before you submit, because sometimes someone else might see something you might have missed. Finally, make use of grammar checking tools. As I mentioned earlier, seriously, in this age and era, it is very unfortunate to find people submitting donor reports with grammatical errors, with spelling errors. You can make use of tools like Grammarly. We have ProWriting Aid. There is Hemingway Editor, Microsoft Word Editor. language tools, Ginger software. You can even use ChatGPT to check your grammar and spelling. Now, you are using these tools, but I must mention here that you must use them with caution. Yeah? Use them with cautions, because when it comes to AI tools, it is always garbage in, garbage out. Don't let an AI tool like ChatGPT write your report for you. That won't work. So just give it instructions to check whatever you have not written right, to kind of construct the sentences better for you, but don't overly rely on these tools. Use it as backup, but not as the main way you are doing your reports. Next is your sentences. Yeah, we have talked of not using complex sentences. Use simple sentences. And how to do this is to go active, literally. Yeah, there are different ways of constructing your sentences. You can either use the active voice or the passive voice. And either of these have significant effect on the experience of the person reading your report. I have two quotes here that I really love. And number one is, never use the passive voice where you can use the active, by George Orwell. And the second person is giving us the reason why we should use the active voice rather than the passive voice. William Strunk is saying the active voice is usually more direct and vigorous than the passive. We want our donors to enjoy reading our reports. So I encourage you to use the active voice at least 80% of the time. Yeah. When you look at the two sentences there, Linda wrote a report, and a report was written by Linda. Which one is active? Which one uses the active voice, and which one is using the passive voice? Anyone? Yes, thank you. Gesang is saying number one, and you are right, Gesang. So number one is active, number two is passive. And number one is active because it only has three components: the subject, the verb, and the object. Yeah, it is a bit easier and easy to understand rather than the passive voice. So why use the active voice 80% of the time while developing donor reports? Number one, it is clear and direct. Yeah. Active voice sentences are more straightforward. And when they are more straightforward, it means the reader finds it easier to understand your points quickly. Next, it is engagement. It engages the reader more effectively, and it captures their interest. Yeah. Conciseness. Active voice requires fewer words. As you can see, let us go back. The first sentence is using fewer words, and the second sentence, it goes to emphasize that active voice is more concise than the passive voice. So let us look at these three sentences. The data was collected by the M&E team. Is that active or passive? The data was collected by the M&E team. Is it active or passive? Anyone? It is passive. Christelle, thank you. And how do we make it active then? How can you convert that to active? Anyone? How do we convert that sentence to active voice? The MEL team should...
The M&E team collected the data.
Thank you. Exactly. You say the M&E team collected the data. Fewer words, more direct. The second one says, your report will be reviewed by us on Monday. How do we convert that? Your report will be reviewed by us on Monday. That one is passive. How do we convert that to active?
We will review your report on Monday.
Thank you so much. So you see, when you are using active voice, it is direct and it engages the leader. You use fewer words, yeah? Meaning the sentence structure is less complex. Now, let us continue. In as much as I've said, oh yeah, use the active voice 80% of the time. But there are some situations that will call for you to use the passive voice. For example, when you are writing your report and you want to avoid blame, yeah? Imagine mistakes were made and you want to avoid directly stating who made the mistake. You are allowed to use the passive voice. When the doer is unknown, imagine, take a look at that sentence. The gate was left open and the equipment was stolen. Yeah? So the identity of the person who stole our equipment is unknown. We are allowed to use the passive voice. Next is when the doer is irrelevant. 3 focus groups and 10 structured interviews will be arranged for the research phase. For this sentence, the focus is more on the research methods we are using rather than who will arrange them. Yeah? We don't care who will arrange the focus groups. We care about the research methods we are using. In this case, when the doer is irrelevant, we are allowed to use the passive voice. Finally, to emphasize the object. For example, the first prize was awarded to Jane. Yeah? The focus is on the recipient. We don't care who gave her. So in this instant, you can use the passive voice. Yeah? So let us look at the last ingredient. So we looked at the ingredients of an excellent donor report. We said that grammar and syntax. We looked at the content. Final one is going to be the writing style. Now, the writing style normally influences the reader's overall experience and it shapes how the readers perceive your work. So, what is it? The writing style is basically the unique tone and feel of your writing. It helps reports to be clear and pleasant to read, and ideally it leaves the donors with a positive impression of your work. When you talk of the writing style, there are three things you need to pay attention to. Number one, the content language. Always opt for plain language and shorter sentences. Then the sentence structure. Use the active voice rather than the passive. Finally, the presentation. Try to use tables, graphs, and images to help you structure your content clearly. And they normally help you convey a lot of information with fewer words. Yeah. So generally, when we talk of the style, when we talk of the style here, donor reports should be professional, approachable, and friendly. We need to balance warm, without being overly unofficial or very, very casual. Yeah? All right. So we have talked of having friendly tone, professional tone, and friendly tone. What are the tips to ensure that we are having this in our reports? Yeah. Number one, use plain language. Be clear and direct. Avoid complex words and lengthy sentences. Include visuals. Break up the text with images. Include images, tables, and graphs. This makes your report visually appealing and easy to navigate. You must remember some people are visual learners. So when you capture their attention with visuals, then it makes the report more interesting for them to read. Next is write actively. We have talked about this. Always mostly use the active voice because it creates friendly, direct statements that are easier to read and understand. Avoid jargons and acronyms. If you must use acronyms, please ensure you have defined them earlier in your document. Yeah. Stay positive. You need to stay positive when even when you are facing challenges or your project is facing some hurdles. You need to maintain a positive tone in your report. Even if you have not achieved something, please share what you have learned. What are the learnings you have picked up in the process? Please steer clear of emotive language. Avoid words and phrases that would trigger strong negative emotions from your readers. We want to send off positive vibes to our readers because we want them to have a positive image of our work. So always stick to neutral expressions, especially when reporting setbacks that your project is facing. So positive tone in your report ensures that donors have a smooth, positive reading experience. And what this does, it encourages them to continue supporting your work. Avoid portraying feelings of frustration, anger, disappointment, even when things are not going according to plan. Let us look at these sentences. Yeah. The first sentence here that has a lot of negativity is, we decided to appoint candidate A because she was less experienced. We decided not to appoint candidate A because she was less experienced than candidate B. That one is sending off some negative vibes. How can you convert this sentence so that you're maintaining a positive tone? Anyone? We decided not to appoint candidate A because she was less experienced than candidate B. Is there a way we can convert this sentence so that it is more positive? All right. We can say we decided to appoint candidate B because she had more experience than candidate A. That sounds a bit more positive than the initial sentence. Next is, consider this. It is impossible to complete this project on time due to staff vacancies. Instead of saying that, you can say, the project progress has been slower than expected due to unavoidable staff vacancies. We are hopeful to get back on track as new staff are now in post. You are being honest about the challenges you are facing, but you're also showing that there is something you're doing about it. Yeah. Next is, overall, the budget is overspent by 20% due to the extra costs caused by the floods. Yeah, you can reframe that to make it a bit more positive. So here are the rules for writing in plain language, things you need to consider. Number one, you need to keep your sentences short because shorter sentences are easier to understand. Yeah. And always make sure that your sentences are focusing on one main idea. Limit paragraphs to one main theme. Don't juggle, don't mix themes in one paragraph. Use active verbs rather than passive verbs because we said we are using the active voice rather than the passive voice. Write as if you're speaking to your reader and choose words appropriate for your reader. Avoid jargon. We talked about that already. Yeah. Write to communicate, not to impress. Remember, your donor reports are a tool for communication. It is not an academic essay. So always focus to pass on the information with the fewest, simplest words possible. that marks the end of my presentation. Linda, I think I've eaten into your time a bit.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's been a great presentation. Thank you so much, Judy, for taking your time to explain what goes into developing excellent reports for donors. I believe participants here can attest to the fact that Judy has done a great job. Okay, so we've reached the point where we would like to ask questions or share any experiences that we've had or any pain points that probably Judy might be in a very great position to address. So the floor is open for questions. Please feel free to raise up your hand and unmute yourself, or you can also drop your questions in the chat window and I'll read them out. Any questions, any comments from anyone?
Okay,
Or
thanks
if we
so
also-
much, madam. I have
Sure.
a question. Okay, my question is that is there an orderly way of inputting the 7 elements of the report, what the report elements? Is it an orderly way of putting it in the report? Or you can just put it in any way, but all of it should be there?
Yeah, Al-Hassan, thank you so much for your question. Well, the elements we looked at are elements you must consider. It must not follow that particular order, but you must consider and ensure that they are appearing in whatever order. I don't know if I've answered your question.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, so just checking the chat. So Christelle said, thank you very much for the insightful presentation. She's asking if she could get the PowerPoint presentation. Judy, are you willing to share? I think there are a number of participants here who are
sure.
requesting. Gloria, likewise. Sure, yeah. Okay. Then we have Precious Moyo. So Precious said, thanks, Judy, for such an insightful presentation. I liked mostly the aspect of active and passive voice. Okay, so it's a comment. So we have a question from Really One. Who is responsible for writing donors' reports? I think that's a good question.
That's a good question. And it really depends on the organization, the reports. In some organizations, they don't have a role for grants, and in such cases, it's normally senior management and operations. So that will really depend on the organization. Someone is asking, is it the project manager or the MEL manager? Again, it depends on the organization, but I will lean towards the project manager and not the MEL manager. Yeah.
Okay, so Gloria is asking if you can share a sample of a donor report.
Well, this is tricky.
And that's a good suggestion.
Is it possible for you to share this? Because why this is tricky is because these reports are normally confidential. So maybe I can edit.
Maybe a template?
Give me time to edit. Yeah.
Okay.
To edit a report that I have so that we send them with names that are not really names of the projects and the donors. Yeah.
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 Okay.
Yes, please.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. I was asking because you've shared how to write the report, but I think that it would be helpful if we look at like the actual technical reports, and then if we'll be able to identify all the 7 things you've mentioned and the data points. Yes, please. Yeah.
Happy to share that. I will edit a report to conceal information that shouldn't be shared and share.
Yes, please. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Precious
Thank you, Gloria. Yeah,
her
Precious.
hand up.
Yeah. Precious, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. I just wanted to share on the issue of who is responsible for generating a donor report. I think I highlighted in the chat box that it's dependent really on the setup in the organization, in the culture. But from experience, I've noticed that the project manager is responsible wholly for the report. For instance, issues around the description of the project should be done by him or her. And then the MEL function should come in terms of measurement. That's how it normally works in an organizational structure. But you will find a situation where even the project manager says the MEL personnel are the ones that are supposed to be, generating the entire report. All they do is they edit it. So sometimes the locus of power really, frustrates the whole effort. But this is entirely a team effort. Yeah, you can't expect the MEL to do everything. I was arguing with one project manager at some points. I was saying to him, look, the risk matrix, in as much as I may make an input, but you should be anticipating that because you are the steering manager. There are quite a number of aspects within the reporting section that need the attention of the manager, but maybe out of laziness, people tend to decentralize the whole effort. And I've been in a situation where even to write minutes of a meeting, you would hear somebody saying, the MEL. Thank you so much for the presentation. I may talk and talk until I don't know.
I think it's what you mentioned. It's the ideal situation, as you said, is the project manager to do the report and the MEL to give us the progress towards our targets in terms of quantitative and qualitative data. Unfortunately, that's not the case in all organizations, and sometimes it's out of sheer laziness. But if we want to look best in the eyes of our donors, I think this must be a responsibility of everyone. Everyone should take responsibility. Like an excellent report, a village makes an excellent report. And by a village, I mean it is a collective work of the operations team, the programs manager, the MEL team. But ultimately, the one who should put this data together should be the project manager.
Okay, so we have a few comments. So Maria said, in our organization, the MEL team does do the numbers and the programs team does the storytelling or the narrative to explain the numbers, but sometimes the MEL takes the whole responsibility. Okay, thank you so much for sharing. Rilawan said, yes, you're right. The program usually puts everything on MEL. And then Gloria shares here that for my project, the project manager, advisors, and specialists contribute to the writing of the reports. The specialists bring on board specialized skill set in communications and M&E, WASH, etc. Interesting team dynamics, I believe. Great. Any more questions or contributions? Any takeaways? So personally, my takeaways have to do with, one, using the 7-question framework more intentionally, especially when developing visuals. and also to be more intentional about using the active voice. Sometimes I tend to forget, but it's a good reminder for me. Even the fact that you mentioned it personally, I think it's something that I will be doing more in my own reporting. As part of the MEL team in my organization. So participants, feel free to also share any takeaways if you have any. Otherwise, I will ask Judy to come back and just share her final words before we draw down the curtain on today's session. Going once, going twice. Okay, Judy, please, back to you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Precious. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to say I find especially the 7 questions, the 5 W's and the 2 H's are very, important, especially when you are capturing the most significant change stories. I find them, being fundamental and really foundational. How you present a story and how you intend to use it to project how your activities or your project has made an impact on a particular social grouping. And remember, we always communicate with people who are miles away from us and away from even the project participants or beneficiaries. So you really need to follow these 7 questions in order for you to effectively communicate the impact that you have captured through a story. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you too. So Maria in the chat said, in case where MEL is required to do everything, let us be intentional about documentation and keep those notes and follow-ups nicely to beef up the numbers. All right, thank you so much for sharing that, Maria. Okay. So we have Al Hassan who is sharing his takeaways. And he said, my takeaway is the use of active voice than passive in donor reporting. Judy, thanks for giving us insights of donor reporting. Great, thank you so much. Okay, any more? One last one. Otherwise, Judy, I'll hand over to you to just give your final closing remarks, and then we can just stay on for a few minutes for some announcements, and then we can end the session.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your comments, for your questions. And I want to finish this session by saying that no one was born knowing how to write excellent reports. We are all learning, and the more you do it, the more you become better at it. So I challenge you, even if you are the MEL team and in your organization you're not at the forefront of writing these reports, keep practicing. Take advantage of opportunities to sharpen your skills in writing these reports. And the more you do it, the better you become.
Awesome. The more you do it, the better you become. Great. Thank you so much. All right. We still have people sharing their takeaways. Okay, so I'll just read one from Rilawan. He said, my takeaway is the quality over quantity tips in report writing. Great. Excellent. Thank you so much, Judy, for your time. Thank you for sharing your wealth of knowledge on donor reporting. And thank you all participants for joining and for making today's session a very lively one with your contributions and your questions. So please, let's take note of the following. So I've shared the feedback form for you to provide feedback on today's session. And also if you would like to propose any topics that we can do moving forward, would be great to receive them. And also if you would like to volunteer yourself as a speaker for one of our sessions, you're welcome to do so. In the chat, I've also shared the link to our YouTube channel where you can access recordings from previous sessions. And today's session will also be worked on and uploaded on our YouTube channel as well for you to catch up or to go back and listen again. And then I'm sharing our social media link. So on X, you can find Women in RMEL by just searching for Women in RMEL, or at W_RMEL. So that's Women in RMEL on Twitter or X. And then on LinkedIn, I'll quickly share the address as well. You can follow us on LinkedIn as well for updates on when we'll be having our next meetup. And yes, it would be great to have you all join us next month. And yeah, please do well to invite a friend to join as well. But thank you all for making it today and enjoy the rest of your week. Hopefully we'll meet again. Thank you again, Judy, for your time with us today. Bye for now. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.